Welcome to Vegan Business Talk with Katrina Fox, author of Vegan Ventures, Start and Grow an Ethical Business. Hello and welcome to episode 45 of Vegan Business Talk. I'm Katrina Fox, journalist, author, media and PR coach, copywriter, editor and proofreader, and founder of Vegan Business Media, a content, events and training platform providing success tips for vegan business owners and entrepreneurs. In this episode, I interview Nicole Sopko and Dan Staackmann from Uptons Naturals, an independently owned natural foods company in Chicago that creates meat alternatives using simple, recognisable ingredients. Dan founded the company in 2005, pioneering flavoured wheat-based seitan. Nicole, his life partner, who also owns 2 yoga studios, came on board in 2010 and now serves as vice president. The business started off small, operating out of a shared kitchen, and has grown to the point where its products are sold in around 2,000 outlets across the US. 3 years ago, it moved into a new building and opened Upton's Breakroom, a cafe for staff and the public. In 2015, Uptons launched the first-to-market seasoned and ready-to-eat jackfruit in the US. 5 years ago, the company took off the word vegetarian from its packaging, leaving vegan to do the job of explaining the product's animal-free status. As well as helping to run Uptons, along with her yoga studios, Nicole is a founding board member of the Plant-Based Foods Association, a newly established trade body representing plant-based alternatives in the marketplace, government and media. In this interview, Nicole and Dan talk about the challenges of starting a company with a business partner, the benefits of implementing a slow growth plan for your business, why Dan turns down offers of investment and chooses to remain the sole owner of the company, the hands-on strategy likely to get retailers and buyers to remember you, why you need to let go of being right when you're in business, and much more. Here's the interview with Nicole Sopko and Dan Staackmann from Uptons Naturals. Hello, Nicole and Dan. It's lovely to have you on the show.
Hello.
Hello. Thanks
for having us.
So look, the first question I ask everybody is, I always like to know, what's the why? You know, running a vegan run business, a mission driven business, it's different to running just, any old kind of business. So tell us about the why behind Uptons.
Well, Dan and I have both been vegan for over 20 years. And I think that, that interest in veganism and furthering the cause of veganism is what caused Dan to start the business in the first place. When we met, Dan had already started the company and had been doing it for almost 4 years. And he opened my eyes to the fact that you can do something that you love for a living. I had no idea.
That's great. That's always a nice discovery, actually, isn't it?
It really is.
Fantastic. So, Dan, how did you get into it then? What made you decide to start a vegan run business? Because I love the fact that you're both activists and you've come at this from, a way to change the world. And obviously running a business is one way to do it. What drew you to starting the business?
Sure. I always had a love of seitan. And I wanted to do something with food, and at the time, there wasn't anybody making it commercially in Chicago, and I believe there was just one other national brand. So it seemed like, something that if I could do well would be a good entry to the market.
Sure. Fantastic. Great. So just talking about some of the challenges to begin with. So a lot of the time, and I ask this with a lot of, people who make vegan products, particularly food products, a lot of the time, where it's ethical, it's environmentally friendly, it's vegan, often has to be more expensive because, unlike animal agriculture, it's not subsidized. So I'm curious, how do you deal with that challenge to stay competitive and attract customers to your products?
Well, that's tough because I don't really think about comparing the meat products, say, to the vegan products as much in terms of pricing. It just kind of is what it is. We know what our ingredients cost and what our labor costs, and we just do the best we can to fall in line with what else is going on in our specific category. We try to keep everything as simple as possible, which I think helps.
The structure of our company is pretty simple and straightforward. I mean, we don't have a lot of extra expenses. We do a lot of work ourselves, and I think that certainly helps. The other thing about that is that, this year we've gotten involved with the PBFA here in the U.S., the Plant-Based Food Association. And so I'm a founding board member of the PBFA, and we're using, our relationship with the other companies in that entity to try to level that playing field a little bit for all of us.
Good.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That's good to hear. Yes, I've heard about the PBFA actually, and I've been meaning to probably reach out to get someone on from there to talk about it, because it does sound like a really great way to change things in that respect. So that's fantastic. So what were some of your key challenges when you were first starting up the business, Dan? What were some of your key challenges?
Probably the most challenging thing was financing. This was about 10 years ago, so there weren't quite as many people that were clamoring to, invest in quote unquote plant-based businesses.
Which wasn't even a term 10 years ago. Right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it wasn't a
thing. So I had actually started the company with a home equity line of credit. There was, we were at an all-time high of no document lines of credit from banks, and at the time I was unemployed, but I owned a home, and without any actual proof of employment or ability to repay the loan, I was able to get a bank to give me enough money to get our own space for production.
I love that. And you know what? I just really want to acknowledge your honesty. I love that you've shared that. And I'm actually really glad to know that the GFC actually served some kind of good purpose. That's probably not very politically correct to say that, but that's kind of what's going in my mind.
Yeah, I may have been one of the few people that actually paid back the loans. But it really worked out. So I was able to take that and just, do everything myself. At the time, I did have a partner, which was another challenge. We got along very well, and kind of lucked out in that regard. But after, I think it was about 4 years, he had decided that the business wasn't really for him. So.
I think the startup is fun, and then the day-to-day is not as fun.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of people get excited about because something's new, and so everything's, there's lots going on, and then once you kind of get into that day to day, it can sort of start to get maybe a little bit monotonous. I know what you're saying. So what about as you've grown? Because you say you're 10 years in now. So how have the challenges grown, or how have the challenges changed as you've grown as a business?
Well, we get people offering us money all the time.
Oh, that's a pretty high quality problem.
We don't necessarily want it. We haven't taken any outside money.
I think that we're one of the few companies in our category, and even in the natural food space at all right now, with a few exceptions, we're still 100% owned by one person, Dan, and so we are actually vegan owned. We have no investors, no outside money. We've done this all,
Wow.
from the ground up ourselves.
And why did you decide to go that route?
There weren't many options in the beginning, and then I had a pretty slow growth plan in place that allowed us to, we started in a shared kitchen, and then once the product was proven with some local restaurants, we got our own production facility, saved up for some retail packaging, started in 7 stores, then 20 stores, then one region, another region, and it just became easy to grow slowly instead of taking somebody else's money, especially once you build up that momentum, it's hard to want to give up even 10, 20, 30% of your business to somebody that is only interested in making money.
Yeah.
Which is most of these guys, they're all like, oh, I want to give you however many $1 million, and you're going to need to sell the business in 5 years, and you're going to need to fire all these people and hire all these people, and we need to grow the company by 1,000% in those 5 years. So get ready.
Yeah, it doesn't sound very appealing when you put it like that. I like that. I like that you said that about that slow growth, because I think that's actually quite inspiring, particularly for a lot of people starting out and running small businesses. Because sometimes, like, we've seen a lot of vegan businesses in the media, and having that that investment, that fast growth, and going on Shark Tank and this kind of thing. And I like the fact this is another model that you can grow. You just don't need to do it quite so fast and have people coming in. And I know one person I interviewed, Parna Barbunis, who has a company called Parna Chocolate, and he said he very deliberately didn't want investors at the beginning, because he actually wanted the company to get successful, so that it would then be valued higher, so that if and when he then did decide to get an investor in, the company would be worth more. So I think there's a lot to be said for that strategy. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
So you said Uptons are available in a number of retail outlets across the US. How did you go about making all of that happen? Because I think that's an interesting one that people are always curious about, particularly if they're starting out, like you said, in a shared kitchen, and then, they really want to expand their products and get them into places where people can get them. So can you talk us through some of that process?
Sure. Back to slow growth. Once we had a proven product locally, some people were familiar with the brand and had tried the product at restaurants, including some people that worked at Whole Foods. So, we started with them really because we knew they had a good local producers program. And we pretty much just walked into one of the stores. We knew that there was a buyer there that was vegan and would definitely be open to at least, the idea. And he was able to bring us into that one store, which then quickly became the 7 at the time locally. And we had self-distributed, we were bringing coolers in the back of the car, delivering everything ourselves. And then once the sales there got, were sort of proven, we were able to find a distributor that could do some of the work for us. Now, it's important to keep in mind for those people that are maybe at that step right now to make sure that you budget for the distributor, because obviously they're going to want to make some money as well.
Yes. Yeah.
So we got a distributor, and that got us into the 20 stores locally, as well as a number of independents. And once those were doing really well, we were able to get into the 40 that were in the Midwest Whole Foods region, and then just kind of let each region prove itself. So, there was somebody that moved from Whole Foods Midwest to the Southwest region, and that person was then interested in bringing us in to the Southwest region. And that was it. For many years, we just kind of did 1 or 2 regions a year until there were no regions left.
Wow. And how many retail outlets are you in across the US approximately?
That's a great question. I think it's got to be around 2,000 maybe.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the other thing about like that slow growth and is that it's work. I mean, when I started with the company, we were still only available in the Midwest here, which is where we live, and we got into the Southwest shortly after that. Dan and I, this was my first business trip with the company. Dan and I got on a plane, went to Texas, and drove around Texas for about a week, visiting every Whole Foods store in the region, to say hi, bring T-shirts, introduce ourselves to the people working in the store, with the hope that, when somebody came in and was looking for a meatless product, that maybe those people would remember us or, would think to recommend the product. And we've done that. We did that for many years in most of the parts of the country, as the products became available, until we just couldn't anymore. But that kind of stuff, that FaceTime stuff, is really important, I think.
Wow, that's great. I love that you shared that. So very much a hands-on approach, and I imagine, going there with T-shirts, would make you quite memorable. So that's a really smart strategies, and I like that you're sharing this, because it sort of shows people, because we want to inspire people, to start and run vegan businesses, but also, let them know what the realities of it are. So I think it's great that you're sharing that you as owners, co-owners, were, certainly in the beginning, doing a lot of that FaceTime. So that's fantastic. So are you saying you're mainly in Whole Foods? Are you in other retailers out as well as Whole Foods, or mainly just Whole Foods?
We're in most of the natural channel here in the U.S. So Vitamin Cottage, Wegmans, who's sort of a conventional crossover account, but they've got a good natural selection. Most of the co-ops, there's a couple different co-op groups. There are a number of regional natural chains like Mothers and Moms, New Seasons.
Great. And are you finding that they're more open nowadays to, say, like 10 years ago, like now they're hearing the word, vegan products, that they're more open to, say, having meetings with you and stocking your brand?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's funny because I was thinking it was probably about 5 years ago, our products on the package used to say 100% vegan/vegetarian. And about 5 years ago, we had a conversation where we decided that we could take the word vegetarian off the package. We had always had it in case people didn't know what vegan meant. They were more likely to know what vegetarian meant. So it was probably about 5 years ago that we took the word vegetarian off, because we felt confident that most people would understand what 100% vegan means. So,
Oh, that's good. That's progress. That's progress for sure. Well, I may as well ask you that question now around, it's one again that I ask everybody about that use of the word vegan in your marketing materials, because, there's that two schools of thought. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's recently gone vegan, but she's using the word plant-based because she just kind of, and particularly when she's teaching people, she's like a trainer and a coach. And she said, if I use the word vegan, it frightens people away a bit. So tell us a little bit about the fact that you're obviously quite bold in your use of the word vegan. So tell us a little bit about that and why you chose that and the prominence of it.
I think that we don't see veganism as being that extreme. I mean, we don't see it as being abnormal. We've both been, like I said, we've both been vegan for over 2 decades. Our families have become comfortable with it. Most people who know us obviously know what we do for a living and know that, that we're vegan and that our house is vegan and all of these things. And so I think for us, like, veganism is very normal and talking about it is very normal. And I think that, by not making it appear too weird or being too precious about the wording around it, it just becomes very common. It becomes less intimidating for people. And we've always been comfortable saying that we're vegan owned, we're a vegan company, we make vegan products. So
fantastic. And what approximately what percentage of your customers are vegan and as opposed to not?
We haven't done any formal study or anything, but based on our interactions with people, I would say it's probably about half and half.
Great.
Yeah,
oh, that's good.
Probably about 50% of the people that we interact with who come, who are buying the products or who are coming to our restaurant here in Chicago are not vegan and maybe not even vegetarian, but just, enjoy the products for exactly what they are.
Fantastic. Just going back to that distribution then, in terms, because we were just talking about, getting products into outlets. What advice would you give to other vegan brands, whether food or otherwise? What advice would you give them if they want to get their products into retail outlets? Really
just start small. Make sure that you prepare yourself for all of the different amounts of money that everyone along the way is going to want to get from you in terms of promotional support, advertising. Eventually, you may need to include a broker into that. For the first 9 years of business, we did all of the sales and managed all of the accounts ourselves. We've only ever had one additional salesperson on staff. The rest of the sales were completely organic. So, about a year ago,
When you say organic, you mean people just bought them from the store?
Correct. Well, that and the store would just bring it in. They would see maybe an independent would see that Whole Foods had a product, or we would go and do a consumer event, a Veg Fest in a different city, and then the attendees would go to the store and say, "Hey, I'd really like you to carry this," and they'd bring it in.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So you didn't need a big sales team to kind of get it going.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, which is difficult too, because there aren't a lot of people that have experience in this kind of sales. So everybody that we have hired, we've had to train, completely from nothing, which takes a lot of time. It's not like you're just selling widgets. You really need to understand how the industry works, and that just takes time.
We
For sure.
we were so we you know, like Dan was saying, we did everything ourselves for many years in terms of sales. You know, we were always a little hesitant to work with brokers. Now I think, you know, that we've gotten into working with outside brokers, we have a good team and we feel comfortable, you know, about what they're out there doing. But I'll tell you a story. This past year at Natural Products Expo West in California, we were there exhibiting, and a broker from another brokerage who we don't work with came over, and he was talking to me, and he was saying, "Oh, I can't wait to sell this stuff." And I just thought I didn't know what I thought. I thought he was confused, or you know, I thought he was trying to pitch me, or and I come to realize, because Dan wrote me a note and slipped it to me, that he thought that we were another company that makes a similar product. And at that point, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to I didn't know how to correct him, because I'd been talking to him for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, we were too far in.
We were way too deep. So you know, we took pictures together. He took sell sheets from us, all this stuff, the whole time thinking that we were the company he worked for. He didn't even know his own catalog well enough to know that we weren't the company that he represented. So so that's amazing. But that kind of stuff happens, and you have to be really careful about the people who are representing your brand and your products, that they know what they're talking about and that they're representing you well in the world.
Absolutely. That's such good advice. Gosh, what a story. Goodness me. Oh, that's great. So you mentioned, you touched on the restaurant. So I believe you opened the Breakroom in 2013. I think I saw on your website. And as I understand it, it's like a cafe restaurant for both staff and the public. Tell us about that. Why did you go down that route? Why did you open it, and what benefits has it brought?
I think so opening the restaurant was part of moving into this building that we currently occupy in Chicago's West Town neighborhood. So we built this building from the ground up here because we couldn't find a building that suited all of our needs. And so part of that process was that instead of just putting this huge building in this you know, existing neighborhood of Chicago that was closed off, we wanted to put something in so that our neighbors could come in and meet us and see what we're doing, and so that, you know, people who are fans of the product, who, you know, buy it wherever they live, when they're in Chicago, they can come in and they can see us, and they can, you know, kind of see what we're doing. And, you know, the Breakroom also serves as a sort of a test kitchen for us. We try products out in there and see what people's responses are. And we all have to eat. So, you know, prior to this, we were doing sort of like family meals for the staff every day. And having the restaurant, you know, means that everyone who works here has a place to eat when they come to work, and you know, that's why we called it the Breakroom. So
fantastic. That's great. So how many staff? You touched on staff. How many staff do you have?
We're a little over 20 right now.
Oh, fantastic. And how do you go about finding them and keeping them?
That's
because, like you said, you want to, especially if you're having to train them from scratch, like you want to hang on to them. You don't want to train them up and then they go off somewhere else. So
yeah, I mean, it certainly can be difficult at times. You know, we prefer that most of the employees are vegan and understand what we do. So right now, I think we're at probably somewhere around 90%.
90% vegan.
90% vegans.
Oh, nice. That's lovely. I like that. That's probably very, very different to your traditional workplace. So for once, the non-vegans are outnumbered.
Yes. Yeah. And most of those people are, you know, if they're not vegan, they're open to the idea. You know, they're not trying to sneak in bologna sandwiches into the locker room or anything, or, you know, ordering out pizza for lunch. And, I mean, I guess they'd probably get in trouble because we have pretty strict rules about what you can bring into the building. But Yeah, I mean, I think, in addition to just offering people a job that is doing something that, hopefully they believe in, we try to be as reasonable as we can with people. We'd like to get ideas from the staff about what they, how they want things to be, what conditions that, they'd like to work under. And
even like our production hours are sort of set by the team, like what time, when we first ever started and had the first, Dan had the first employees, he just asked them, what time do you want to start in the morning? And that was the time we started. I mean, it doesn't, as long as the work gets done, we try to be reasonable with people about what we can be reasonable about.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love that flexibility. It sounded like a very attractive place to work, actually. It's great.
It's not all just eating sandwiches. We do work.
Although you do get a free sandwich every day.
You do get
Really? A free sandwich? Oh, gosh, this is sounding great. No wonder you've got the vegans of Chicago queuing up to work with you. It sounds great. Now, what about any other type of expert help have you used to grow your business? So I'm talking more about kind of, I don't know, things like business coaching, marketing, people, PR, that kind of thing. Have you used any of those services? And if so, what were the outcomes?
We've never used any kind of business coach. I don't know that I would necessarily recommend that. I guess it depends. I guess it depends on what you're trying to do. For us, we would maybe just befriend some other companies that had been in our position and occasionally ask a few questions, or just not be afraid to ask a retailer, like, what is it going to take for me to get to this next level? Like, what can I do to get into another region, or what are you looking for?
I think it is not being afraid to not know. Like
Yeah.
he's asking, but to get back to the question, we do now work with a PR agency, and that's been really interesting, and does help get the products out there into channels where I think previously maybe we wouldn't have thought to go.
And it also depends on the project and how much money you have. I mean, I say, in the beginning, we didn't have any money to hire anyone, so that wasn't even an option. Now we've got the PR company, we've got the team of brokers. We've hired one consultant on a special project that was above our technical ability, that from anyone in house.
Yeah,
and I think
cool.
The good thing about like the slow growth model of the company is that and not having the budget to hire people until more recently, the past really 2 years is the only time that we've started working with people like that, has been really good for both of us, because we both learned the industry and we both had to learn how to do everything, and it makes a huge difference when it comes to managing those people when you do eventually hire people to do those jobs, because a little bit about what it takes to do them.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, probably gives you an appreciation of what's involved in their tasks.
Yeah, and so if you have a better idea about if what someone's saying to you is true or not, and also like you have an understanding of what they're undertaking.
Brilliant. No, that's excellent advice. Excellent. So let's talk a bit about competition, because as you mentioned, like 10 years ago, there wasn't that many, kind of vegan meat type alternatives around. So now, of course, there are a lot more options available and, seem to be more keep coming on the market. How do you go about standing out both within and outside of the vegan business arena and to continue attracting customers?
I think the main thing for us is just having really simple ingredients. a lot of the other products that you'll see out there are really high tech, and they've got a laundry list of ingredients and, flavor enhancers, and everything we do is really straightforward. There's usually nothing on any label that most people wouldn't understand. So
nice. That's a very nice USP and explained very simply, which is great. I think that's a really good example. Sometimes you ask business owners, what makes you stand out? And they're not quite sure. So they end up sort of rambling a bit. So I like that you've very clearly identified that. That's great. Now, many marketing gurus say that nowadays, we should just stop thinking about having competitors and instead embrace them as collaborators and potentially do joint ventures with them. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, we don't see a lot of the companies in our space as competitors necessarily. I mean, I even, like on the PBFA, I work with Jamie from Tofurkey, and I think that both of us even have a hard time seeing each other as competitors because we're both doing something that is uniquely different, in terms of our ingredients list, our processes. So, even though we're both making alternatives to meat, we're doing something, we're filling a space, right, for someone. We're each making a product that's appropriate for someone or that someone's going to seek out. And so I think that that's great. That said, we have had the instance of a product that we had in development that was leaked, and someone took our idea. And luckily for us, we were the ones who brought it to market first. We still, we still had that we were the first to market with it. But I think that kind of stuff happens, and it's unfortunate, and it sort of like, it hurts your feelings, but you have to, eventually you have to let it go. You have to just do what you're doing as well as you can. It doesn't matter what anyone else has to say about you or, what they're doing. I mean, we're 100% committed to our products and to our mission. And I think that ultimately, that is what makes the difference.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I know what you said about, you mentioned Tofurkey, because when I interviewed Seth Tibbett from Tofurkey, and he said, he actually enjoys the fact that there's more and more people coming into that arena, because I think he made the analogy, a rising tide lifts all boats. So it's actually better for the category to do that. So that's great. You're working together with Jamie at the PBFA. That's fantastic. Now, we touched on this a little bit earlier, just some of your marketing strategies. I know you mentioned you did Veg Fests. And so what are your current marketing strategies? Which do you find most effective?
Pretty much, it's still a lot of consumer events. It's really great to be able to connect with people in different cities and get them to try the products. We also do a number of in-store demos, which can be good or bad depending on who's doing them for you. But if you're able to do them yourself, certainly starting out on a local level, it's really an effective way, because you're there in person, you're sharing your excitement of the products, people are getting to try them, and then hopefully buying again and again.
Yeah, I love that you've shared that, because we hear so much about online and everything sort of social media. And it's really actually nice that there's still these offline methods of marketing that still can't quite be beaten. Like you said, that connection with the customer where they're literally physically there in front of you and getting to try your product.
Yeah. And then the other thing is promotions in store, like a discount when you see like a sale price, like a 2 for $6, or a buy one get one or something like that. When people are shopping sort of blindly, they just they tend to gravitate to what's on sale. So if they haven't tried you, if they see a sale sign, maybe they're more inclined to pick it up for the first time.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I do that at my local store, just with like regular strawberries. I'm like, 3 pallets for $5. I'm, oh, okay, yeah, I'll have the 3. It's interesting the way that psychology works. So I'm glad it's working for the vegan cause. I like that. So for people who aspire to owning a vegan-run business, what in your opinion, what are the things they need to take into account before they make that jump from, working in a day job, working as employed, salaried, to self-employed entrepreneur?
I guess it would be almost the same for any kind of business. Just know that you'll be fully responsible for everything, including all of your employees, and you might not make any money for a long time. So, if you don't have a trust fund or a savings, be prepared to have that second job, or figure out some way to hustle up enough to pay your bills and enough energy to work another 20, 40, 60 hours a week building your dream.
You should talk about what you did.
Yes.
Yeah, tell us what you did.
The home equity line of credit was definitely not enough to continue to pay the mortgage, or even really the rent of the facility that we had.
Or to pay the home equity line of credit.
Yeah, or to pay the home equity line of credit. I mean, it was just like a nice, here's a bit of cash so you can buy the things that you need right now. And at that point, we had already had enough income to pay for some of the day-to-day expenses, not including labor. It was myself and my partner at the time doing all of the work, not getting paid for at least a few years. And eventually we got, we were paying ourselves like minimum wage as kind of a joke. And, for me, I bought and sold design, furniture, art for several years, mostly stuff that I would pick out of the garbage or find at estate sales or thrift stores. And at the time, I was very lucky with that. So.
Fantastic. That's very enterprising of you. I like that, because I was thinking that, when people say, sometimes it can take, like you say, a good few years to, for a business to turn around. I know with Seth, again from Tofurky, it took him years and years, running this Tempe business before, Tofurky sort of hit the big time. But so I'm kind of curious then, in that case, like, how does one know whether to stay with something like that or when to quit? Do you know what I mean? Because some people might argue, well, look, you've been going for years and years and you still haven't made it. Do you still how do you know whether to still keep going or to go, you know what, this really isn't working, it's time to move on?
I think that's up to the individual.
I think that there are some signs, probably.
There may be some signs, but...
Are you making progress? Is the product becoming available in more places? Are you learning anything about, things you should be doing the same or different? Not every product is going to make it, I guess, but I think that you if you can look around objectively and see, is this going well?
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. That's really, that makes sense. Like, looking at are things moving? Even if they're moving slowly, at least if they're moving, that's a good sign.
And do you still like what you're doing? If you've been doing it for 2, 3, 5 years and you still really love it, as long as maybe you're not losing money, maybe there's a chance.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I think that's the other thing, is that people think that, when you're self-employed that you love your job. Ultimately, I think that we both love what we do, but there are parts of our jobs that we do not like. There's loving the overall, but the reality is that there are some individual aspects of your job that are unpleasant. So
Absolutely, yes. No, I agree. Absolutely, no, that's great advice. So, what were the both of you doing before you got into Uptons, and what skills from those previous jobs or careers have been useful in running your current business?
I did not have a background in either food or business, really. I guess the most experience I had was just simply as an only child. So I always had to figure things out for myself. And I think that helped a lot. I also came from the punk rock community, I guess, which has a lot of sort of do-it-yourself ethics involved. You want to put on a show, you want to see your favorite band. You're not, well, at least 20 years ago, you wouldn't. You don't just go to the arena. You've got to.
No internet.
There's no internet. You've got to find a place to have the show. If you're in a band, you want to go on tour. You got to get a beat up van and make a bunch of phone calls and send letters, and you just need to figure it out. So
Cool.
yeah,
cool. What about you?
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's okay. I was going to say, what about Nicole?
Well, so I got involved with this company when I was laid off of my my last job. Dan and I had started dating, and I worked in publishing. I did print production for magazines, and I did that for many years on the East Coast and here in Chicago. And I guess I should say that neither Dan or I graduated from college. We both went to college and then left college. So neither of us have a degree in anything relevant to what we're doing. But we've learned by doing.
Fantastic. Yeah. I love that. That's really inspiring. It's really good, I think, for people to hear that, to say, you don't necessarily have to have an MBA. And I'm not saying, no one should go out and get it and they're worthless, but it's just good to know that, that you don't have to have these things in place. You can have those enterprising skills that you learn as you go. So that's excellent. So we're on to the final stretch now. So last kind of couple of questions are around mindset. So around, running the business. Obviously, as you say, especially if not necessarily you've got that slow growth, so it can be a bit stressful. And running any kind of business can be quite stressful. So it can also be one of the most effective forms of personal development, because as you've touched on, it forces you to learn new things, get out of your comfort zone. What personal qualities do you believe are essential to staying the course and running a successful business?
I guess determination. You've got to be a bad quitter. You've got to be accepting of other people's opinions and try to be open with your employees and even just outsiders' opinions. You can't get upset when somebody says that they hated your product or this was terrible, because everybody's got a different opinion. You'll hopefully get some people that say they loved your product. It's the best thing ever.
I definitely had to develop a thicker skin, because especially, with the internet and everything, people are unafraid to say, I hate this, and, you shouldn't have done it this way. Or, we do get some crazy mail sometimes from people who are upset for whatever reason, and so certainly some the nice comments help to offset that. And I think the other thing that I've learned is that you can't be afraid to be wrong. You have to be able to admit it when you're not right and be able to change course, because if you're stuck on your opinion, or you're stuck on this is the way that we're going to do it, and it's not working, you're just going to drive yourself into the ground. You have to try to be accepting of the fact that you might not be right, or that you might not know.
Excellent. No, that's very good advice. Very good advice. Sometimes you're right. We can sort of latch on and it's kind of my way or the highway. And I think being in business you have to have a certain amount of flexibility. So I'm glad you touched on that. Now, obviously, we've got to have a sort of a strong emotional well-being in order to be a vegan, to be a business owner. So what are some of the things that you do to maintain a strong emotional health and well-being?
Well, I don't know. So we do both practice yoga. I actually teach yoga, and I don't know if this contributes to our emotional well-being, but we also own 2 yoga centers.
Oh, do you? I didn't know that. Oh my gosh. So in addition to running Uptons, you own a couple of, oh my gosh, I'm very impressed.
So those are my businesses. I run 2 yoga centers. So that certainly keeps us busier. I don't know if that helps, but having the access to that, and Dan comes to my classes usually once a week, so we have that. And I think for us, for some couples, I think it wouldn't work out, but for us, working together, I think does make it easier, because I can. It's difficult to say to your boss, like, I'm just not feeling this today, or like something happened at home or whatever, but Dan knows, and so I think having complementing personalities where, like, the things that stress me out don't stress him out, and the things that drive him crazy don't drive me as crazy. And so we're able to work together in that way, and that really makes a huge difference. And also, when we moved into this building, we put our house on the 3rd floor, which some people would find really stressful. But for me, it makes it much easier because, if I need a break, I can literally go home for,
nice.
go home for 15 minutes, take a break, get something out of my own refrigerator, like whatever it is, and then I can go back to work. And that makes a huge difference. If there's an emergency at work, all we have to do is walk downstairs. We don't, it's not a rushing over there thing. So that does really help for us.
For sure, I can imagine, and especially as you say, you've got the other businesses as well. That's fantastic. I love yoga. Actually, I always find I feel a lot better when I'm doing my yoga poses. It just kind of takes you out of that situation, where you can be so in the moment, where everything's kind of like, and it's great to be able to do those things, and very important as well. So final question then: what's your long-term vision? You've been in business for about 10 years now, and obviously you say you've had the slow growth, but you're doing very well, and in 2,000 outlets. That's amazing. And you've got some fantastic new products come out. I think one with the jackfruit, which looks delicious. What's your long-term vision for Uptons and for yourself?
Australia.
Well, that's good to hear, because I'm based in Sydney and I'm looking there going, oh, that looks really nice. I haven't seen them over here yet. So that's good. I'm glad to hear that. Tick.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that we're working on kind of over the next year, and that we've been working on is some more international distribution. So that's in the works for us. New products, and I don't know, just sticking with it, I guess. Right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, I'm very pleased to hear that. Well, I shall certainly advocate for your products when you do bring them over here. I shall check them out for sure. That looks wonderful. Thank you so much, both of you, Nicole and Dan. It's been wonderful chatting with you. Shared some great insights and experiences, and I think a lot of people will get some great tips and advice from that. So thank you both again very much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having us.
So that was Nicole Sopko and Dan Staackmann from Uptons Naturals. You can find out more at uptonsnaturals.com. And that link is on the show notes page at veganbusinessmedia.com/podcasts and going to episode 45. Now for our Vegan Business News Roundup. American vegan fast food chain Veggie Grill is going gangbusters with the recent announcement of another $22 million investment to enable it to expand outside the west coast of California, where the majority of its current 28 outlets are based, reports Grub Street. CEO Steve Healy told Nation's Restaurant News that the company is still evaluating markets, but is looking at urban areas in the Midwest and the East Coast, as well as airports and university food courts. Veggie Grill is also about to become the first chain to offer the Beyond Burger from Beyond Meat on its menu. This is such good news. I love Veggie Grill. They have a fantastic range of delicious vegan food. It took me ages to decide on what to get on my first visit because the choice is so diverse. Co-founder TK Pilan is one of the entrepreneurs whose insights are featured in my book Vegan Ventures, Start and Grow an Ethical Business, and he said that from the start the Veggie Grill team always wanted to be a national chain, so I'm thrilled that the time's right for them to expand across the US. And you can check out my interview with TK in episode 2 of Vegan Business Talk. Meal kit delivery service Purple Carrot is now available at Whole Foods Market, reports Digital Trends. The rollout has started at the Whole Foods Market flagship store in Dedham, Massachusetts, and will roll out to other stores in the company's North Atlantic region. Purple Carrot founder and CEO Andy Levitt said, "We created a delivery service that provides all of the raw, pre-measured ingredients people need to cook delicious and healthy plant-based meals across the country. Over the last year, we've listened to the feedback of our busy consumers who also wanted to find our products on grocery shelves." So this is a good example of a vegan business listening to their customers and being flexible with delivery of its products. It's important not just to rest on your laurels, but to make sure you're taking care of your customers and giving them what they want. And of course, being on the shelves at Whole Foods Market gives Purple Carrot the chance to get their products in front of new customers. So it's very much a win-win. The UK's first vegan cafe with its own on-site soya dairy facility has opened in Norwich, reports Eastern Daily Press. Tofurai will offer a range of vegan produce, all made in-house. Owners Steve Lepper and Jenny McCann were inspired to open the shop after experimenting at home with making their own soya-based products. Lepper, who has a background in education and as an analyst in the private sector, said the idea had come from microbreweries and roasters. People were doing craft tofu and milks, but not as a micro-dairy, he said. The couple will make their own soya milk on site, which will be available in 500ml or 1 litre bottles. And they're doing their bit for the planet by offering customers the ability to be able to pay a deposit for a reusable bottle that they can then bring back and swap for a freshly sealed one when they next buy the milk. What a great venture and yet another first in the vegan market. I'm so loving these creative and innovative businesses. Fantastic. Pubs in the UK are missing out on a potential £5,000 in profit by not serving vegan food, according to Barry Honeycomb, founder of meat alternative company More Than Meat. Honeycomb made the claims to the Morning Advertiser as part of the business's launch of its new vegan joint of lamb and chorizo sausages, specifically to eateries. Honeycomb says the aim of the new products is to empower chefs to create their own unique vegan food offerings. So, for example, the sausages can be used cold in sandwiches, or they can be used in hot dishes. And the lamb, and I must admit it feels weird using animal names for vegan products, can be used to create shepherd's pie, moussaka, or even a traditional roast lamb and gravy alternative. Now, what's clever about this story is the extra angle about pubs missing out on money-making opportunities. So it's not just, here's another launch of some new products. Honeycomb's given the media a nice juicy hook for the story by making this claim, and the new products are included in the article, giving the company a good bit of publicity. So remember, when you're pitching the media, always look for strong and interesting angles, not just the obvious. Finally, this next story is another example of how making a bold claim can get you media coverage. UK chef, it's all happening in the UK this week on the vegan business news front, UK chef Matthew Nutter says he can make cauliflower taste better than Christmas turkey. And this is the headline the Manchester Evening News has gone with. "I can make cauliflower taste better than Christmas turkey" is a great headline because it piques the curiosity of both non-vegans and vegans alike, making them more likely to click through to read the story online. And of course, media outlets want traffic and hits so that they can convince advertisers to spend money with them. Now, you might remember, if you're a regular listener to this podcast, that Nutter made similar bold claims recently when he opened Stockport's first vegan fine dining restaurant, The Allotment. He said at the time, "I can make aubergine taste better than steak and cauliflower taste better than chicken." Now he's been smart and capitalised on the fact that Christmas is coming to make another proclamation, telling people to forget nut roast, that's another great soundbite, and claiming that his southern fried cauliflower is the best choice for Christmas dinner. So this is a great example of coming up with a relevant, timely angle and claim to get free publicity for your vegan business. Well played, Matthew Nutter. So that's it for this episode of Vegan Business Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a review and rating on iTunes or any other platform you're listening on. Finally, I encourage you to head over to veganbusinessmedia.com, where you can find more resources, including details of my media and PR consultations, copywriting, editing and proofreading services to help you grow your vegan business. I'm Katrina Fox, author of Vegan Ventures, Start and Grow an Ethical Business, and I look forward to catching up with you in the next episode of Vegan Business Talk. Bye for now.
Yeah.